Welcome to Mulberry Conversations, a podcast for business leaders and job seekers, where we discuss insights and strategies with leading professionals to help you navigate the ups and downs of today's competitive job market. Today's conversation is brought to you by Mulberry Talent Partners, a full-service recruiting, temporary staffing, and executive search firm offering talent advisory services to individuals and organizations serving the Pacific Northwest and San Francisco Bay Area. Today, we're joined by Dawn Rasmussen, a certified resume writer and the president of Pathfinder Writing and Career Services. She's been writing resumes for nearly 14 years, and today she will provide you with the key tips you need to know when it comes to your resume writing so that you can put your best foot forward.
Good afternoon. Hello, Dawn.
Hey, Lauren, how you doing?
It seems like forever since we met in person.
I know. Yeah, we were just talking about that. I'm excited to chat today.
We recommend that people use a service like yours. It makes a big difference in terms of how people feel about being able to share your areas of expertise and to clearly communicate that. It makes a difference for people in terms of how their resume is presented, but how they show up in an interview setting, more organized in terms of how they deliver that message. So what changes have you seen? Talk to us a little bit about the evolution, where you see things now, and what people need to be thinking about as they prepare to go out on the job market.
I think probably a seismic shift happened during the Great Recession where people were on the job, they've been in employers, and a lot of times we get to know everybody, we become friends, it feels like family, yet at the end of the day when the recession happened, employers were cutting staff and people were absolutely flabbergasted saying, oh, I feel like I was part of the family. How could you do this to me? I came in early. I stayed late. I gave my firstborn child. We're all friends. And they were just shocked. And I think it was a wake-up call because a lot of people were pretty much just cruising along and not really thinking about the greater picture of what their career looked like. So the shift happened that you can't just depend on your employer to take care of you. You are there as a result of a business agreement. In as much as that you're still providing value to the employer, they keep you on, and then you stay there as long as you feel like you're being compensated for that value. So the resume has become an important tool to really help tell your story about that value that you bring to the table. So essentially, it's become your marketing document. I tell all my clients, you need to keep track of all of your accomplishments, your plan of work, your staff performance reviews, any project recaps, anything that would help you tell the story and kind of outline what you've done so that you have a better perspective of how you help move the needle, how you made a difference. So another big shift is that people used to just simply copy job posting their job descriptions into their resume, and it's just not going to hack it these days. That does not tell the employer, the prospective employer, anything about that person and what they've been able to do. So it's all about value. So we really have to think about how are you going to show how you made a difference, how you moved the needle, how you benefited that company, because prospective employers are looking at that as a way to gauge what this person might be able to do for them. So it's been a really big shift in how we write resumes and how we present ourselves. It is an excellent exercise for everyone to regularly, not just once in a blue moon or when you have to, but regularly update your resume, because if you're more present with your accomplishments, you feel much more secure about yourself and confident in your value. And that really can translate to either promotions or raises and that kind of thing, or at least make you feel empowered that if you don't like what you're seeing where you are now, then it's time to start looking for something else.
Absolutely. And how does LinkedIn fit into this, your resume, and how do they work together?
Well, LinkedIn, it's a necessity nowadays because you have to have a digital footprint. I understand a lot of people don't want to have any kind of social media out there. My husband is one of them. And yet at the same time, employers, it's like they will get your resume and then they will go out and look for your LinkedIn to see what else they can learn about you. That does give you that online visibility. But it's also an incredible opportunity to speak directly to your audience and make it much more personal because it is social media, right? And
Mhm.
so what you're doing is you're creating an opportunity to talk directly to your target audience while you're also conveying culture fit and also chemistry. A lot of job seekers don't even realize there's a whole separate version of LinkedIn called LinkedIn Recruiter, which I'm sure you have a version of it there, Lauren. But
Mhm.
that's like a whole nother operating system that's using LinkedIn to slice and dice candidates while you're trying to source for a job opening. And so people need to know about that. So the keyword stuff comes into play there too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And so the keyword piece is something that you know well
Oh, yeah.
and can help candidates use those words to help the algorithm so that they are seen.
It is mission critical. So I
Mhm.
coach people that you need to have essentially at the top of your resume a job title headline that's pointing your arrows externally towards where you want to go, what types of jobs. But then it'll also serve to frame up what you're about to discuss in the resume so you organically attract the right keywords in that same fashion. So you have to have a focus point. Because basically, if you can't tell an employer what you're all about, they're not going to take the time to figure it out either.
Right. In terms of that title piece, there's a lot of titles that aren't titles.
Mhm.
They're more statements.
Well, I
Yeah.
have a magic formula that I like to tell people about. So you can't just say like sales professional. That doesn't tell like where they are in their career or anything like that. So you should be clear on where you are in your career. And so it's are you an assistant, a specialist, a coordinator, a manager, a director,
Mhm.
senior director, VP,
Mhm.
EVP, or C-suite. So you need to figure out the pay part. That's very critical for you to advance your career in terms of career ascendancy and also the earnings potential. But then you
Mhm.
also need to be clear on what your function is. Are you in sales? Are you in marketing? Are you in operations? Are you in finance? So what's your bailiwick? What's your strength? So you want to marry the function plus the career level. And that gives you basically a target to start from. And as
Mhm.
we all know, companies don't do a very good job sometimes of actually coming up with a really descriptive job description. That's why you need to clarify it yourself in your resume, but you
Mhm.
can tweak it, your what you've put in your resume to match whatever the language is of the job opening so it's clear, but you don't want to change your job title headline at the top of the resume so much that the rest of your content does not agree with it.
Are there templates and things that people can use to try to enhance their own LinkedIn profile on their own?
So there's two parts to it. With the LinkedIn profile, number one, you have to have a robust profile. Like if you fill in all the fields and you're very thorough and diligent by completing your profile as fully as possible, make sure you add sections because there's an opportunity. There's like a baseline LinkedIn profile, but you can also add sections. The more you can add and more links, that you just want to have as robust a profile as possible. So that's part one, but you can't just build it and hope they'll come. So you really have to think of LinkedIn as your garden that needs to be tended all the time. So you can't just have the lights on, but nobody's home. You have to engage with people. You have to post things. You can have the choice of either just doing a short form post, which just looks like, hey, I was attending this conference, blah, blah, blah. Or you could actually create a blog post format, which is a long form post, which is a great way to demonstrate your SME, subject matter expertise in a particular area, but then also get those keywords in there too. So there's that. You can share links, you can do polls, you can comment other people's posts, you can join groups and facilitate conversations, ask questions, answer questions. And there's events and you can go live. I mean, there's so much content you can generate on LinkedIn. And you have to think of LinkedIn as what I call your career grand central station. It gives you a lot more flexibility to add more content than your resume. And it's obviously more dynamic because you can click on links and it could be a video of you talking or something like that versus just the static resume content. So it hasn't replaced resumes yet. It's still going, but it is in tandem and connected to resumes. It's to basically add on to that conversation and have that a little bit more social element to it so that the people get a better sense of who you are.
So, what advice do you have for people that have a lot of personality statements? There's the professional profile,
Mhm.
and what happens, the personality and the personal interest feed into it. Some people are extremely expressive that way. How do you help people understand how to stay focused on the professional side and also to be able to show themselves I just think there's a fine line.
Yeah, I think that you're right. And it's a little bit hard to define that line because you want to show the personality, but in general, LinkedIn is a different animal than any of the other platforms because basically this is like an employment. It's a career connections, professional connections, and an employment channel. So
Right.
you got to know your target audience. And so keeping in mind, I'll insert something personal so that people get to see a little bit more of the other side of me. And that's more like I went on this trip or I went to this conference. I've written blog posts on LinkedIn. I was a bullied kid and I wrote a post saying, believe in yourself, anything is possible. And going from a kid who was bullied in school to being recognized as the alumni of the year, you never know where your career is going to take you. And so it was personal, but it was also professional because I tied it back. So again, knowing your audience is going to be critical. And just remember, whatever you put out there can come and help you or bite you in the behind too. Just because you delete it doesn't mean it doesn't get archived out on the internet. So just be aware about that.
What changes are on the horizon? AI is here. And there was a time maybe before the pandemic where there was a lot of talk about not using resumes anymore and having a video or different ways to showcase your backgrounds, and were organizations using a different method. Is there anything that you can share about the current and future changes that are happening?
I just got back last month from the National Resume Writers Association conference, and I have a connection from my speaking circuit who's like the tech guru. And so I had pulled him in. He was a featured speaker talking about AI and resumes. Basically, his take is AI for resume writers is not going to take our jobs away. What will happen is the people that know how to use AI will. And
Okay.
there's still a pretty hard divide of people that want to do the one-on-ones with our clients, resume writers in particular, because we as human beings have a lot more empathy and ability to sense somebody out and get a better sense of who they are and what they bring to the table and ask questions, whereas AI takes everything at face value and it's more data analytical perspective.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's interesting. That's not to say that AI won't improve. Obviously, it's gaining more and more information every single day. So there could be a
Sure.
day that resume writers are no longer available. But the problem is, it's also always controlled by who puts in the information. And job
Right.
seekers may not know the right prompts, or they may not understand how to instruct the AI. And if someone's a college student and they're just trying to slap together AI, might be the way to go just because they don't have that much experience. But there's a lot more nuance as people go on in their careers. And as I found, there's a lot of challenges out there that people have
Mhm.
been out of the workforce coming back. Maybe they got fired. So I can x-ray through their previous career and pull out the threads that we can use to weave into their next career direction. I don't believe the AI is there yet to be able to do that skill, to understand what questions to ask and what kinds of relevant skill sets and relevant accomplishments fit in that new direction. So I don't see AI replacing that anytime soon. It's not smart enough, but it could happen in the future. I'm not rolling it out for sure.
At the end of the day, the coaching and partnership ally piece of what you do is probably in many ways the most important part of this process. It's human interaction and
Mhm.
helping people bring forward their skills and their what they bring, but being able to articulate that.
Yeah.
And that can be hard for a lot of people. So again, there is the human piece and that coaching piece. And so many times when I refer candidates to you, it's that interaction that sparks the next step for them,
Mhm.
which is hugely valuable. And they do get that with us too. We spend a lot of time with our candidates and helping them with their resume or to better articulate, let's say, a transition that was a little bit rough and tumble, or being able to express the positive things about the reason why they left a certain role. And so that those things all are so critical, but that's the beginning of their journey.
Absolutely. And there's some discretion that has to happen if I'm going to help someone switch gears and go into a different field. You have to tell the truth on your resume. Here's my title and that kind of thing. But The other part that they can't talk about is maybe their boss was a nightmare or toxic, and you can't put that in a resume, but who's to say AI might try to do that as a way to explain things or something like that. So being nuanced, there's some things that you can say. I did all this stuff before the company reorganized. So there's an inference there so that the reader knows it wasn't the employee's fault that they got let go or there was a reduction in force. So without saying it, you're saying it. But you can't say that there was a nightmare CEO who decided to clean house or whatever, that because they were so egomaniacal. There's so many bad bosses out there.
There's certainly ways to express things in a way that protect the organization that you worked for and
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
relationships that you have. And that discretion is so important.
A lot of people have NDAs and they can't disclose certain things, but when we're in the resume mode, we want to try to quantify results. So I find workarounds for that.
Sure. What do you say to people that the title of a very significant role just doesn't resonate for the reader? Their title is blocking them, because so many times when hiring managers look at a resume, they're looking at length of time in job, career progression, they're looking at titles of roles, responsibilities, the industries they've worked in, but it's literally a 10 to 15-second glance. And sometimes the title is hindering their next move. What is your advice there?
Well, going back to what I said earlier, you have to be honest. So I always tell candidates, like, if their title is holding them back, that's horrible for the person, because that really does kind of pull the reins back on their actual job progression. So the solution to that is to give the actual job title that the person has, and then in parentheses say equivalent to, and then whatever the comparable job title is, and that should be more directly related to the job title headline at the top of the resume. So the idea is that companies sometimes are just terrible about naming job titles, and they're not accurate, or maybe the person's scope of work has far exceeded their original work that they started out doing. And so their work now eclipses that, but their job title hasn't kept up with it. So by creating the actual job title, parenthesis, equivalent to, and then whatever that job title desired is, unparenthesis, you're saying the right thing, but you're also letting the reader know that there's an equivalency, but you have to be able to back that up, that assertion, in the content underneath there. As far as what kinds of wins are you talking about, you need to have wins that represent that higher level or that equivalency. So it helps the reader better understand that you're not just making something up.
Oh, for sure. And how do you feel about reasons for transitions on the resume, and if they're in a contract or not?
Okay, so let's talk about contracts. So if it's like a temporal or an internship or limited term contract, then I would put the actual job title, parenthesis, limited term contract, parenthesis. It's clear that this person isn't just a pop in and pop out, the job hopper. A lot of people get recruited away or referred over to something. So I like to highlight that. I just usually advise not to include or explain away why you left a job, unless it's something that you think might hurt your chances if you've been there for a while. And
I think that's a tough one for people, but sometimes there's too much information about the transitions and other times there's not enough. And so it's hard to strike that balance, but you don't see it that much on resumes unless it was a layoff or a reduction in force of some kind, or reorg, or company closed, or acquired.
Although on the flip side, I do like to mention in the resume that someone was retained during an acquisition based on historical knowledge and expertise, or something like that, or progressively promoted within the company. So we want to highlight those things that show that they've been a valued asset. And one thing that I see, I want to just throw this out, that's a big no, is that people, if they've held multiple jobs at the same company, oftentimes they will lump the entirety of their entire tenure at the company under the big job. And it's not accurate. You have to list every single job you've held and the dates worked, because you have not held that big job the entire time you've been there. And actually, I say that's a benefit to you to list all those other jobs, because it means you were a valued asset and moved up. So it's you need to include it. It's honest that way, but it also is a valuable thing to your resume too.
But a lot of people I see that make the mistake of listing the company multiple times. as
Mhm.
opposed to listing the company and then the different roles underneath the company. So it's more succinct and clear to the
That's what I do is I stack the job titles. So I put the company name, city and state, line 1, most recent job dates, work line 2, line 3, line 4, line 5, etc. So that way it's nice and concise and someone can just clearly see, okay, they moved up.
What is your advice on location? Do you think it's important to say some we see United States, others we see Scappoose, Oregon, other times we'll see Portland Metro? What is your advice there?
It's changing, and I think a lot of it changed with the work from home, inspired by our COVID pandemic that happened, and so many people did start working from home. So, in general, and especially with so many privacy concerns, people that post their resume on job boards are just inundated with spam. And quite frankly, there's not, as far as I know, any qualification process as to who
Mhm.
constitutes an employer. On
Right.
those job boards, you pay the money and then you have access to these people. And you don't know where your information is being shipped off to. So
Mhm.
I generally recommend your phone number, your email address, and then your LinkedIn profile just to be
Right.
safe, unless it's a very specific job geographically cited in the job description, then you can mention the city and state. But oftentimes people get a guess of where you live based on where
Right.
your last job is.
But you don't put your address on your resume
Oh,
anymore.
no. No, no.
No longer. Some of our listeners do not know what a pink slip means.
Oh,
And
okay.
I know I just thought I'd circle back to that because
Yeah, that is an
that's
old
one of those.
term.
And what is a pink slip? Just for those that aren't familiar with that term and how it came to be.
Well, back in the old days when
Yeah.
you're going to be terminated or reorged or your job was eliminated or whatever, then your notice would come in on a pink slip of paper. And so it's
Yep.
just become more of the vernacular now versus the reality. It's mostly an email from a lot of what I hear, or someone walking in your office and you have 10 minutes to pack everything up.
So it was just one of those things where people go, "What are you talking about?" I've dated myself. Help. What are the most common questions that you receive from people that want to work with you? Or what do they come to you with? I think there's a lot of discovery that happens in the work that you do. Like they come to you for a very specific reason and it turns into something else because the conversation and the depth of experience that you have in working with people, you're able to bring more than writing a resume.
People from all walks of life have walked through my virtual doors, and I've worked with everybody from entry level people or new immigrants to the United States to CEOs of Fortune 5 companies. For me, I feel like I've gotten a secret MBA just because I've taken the time to get to know all these folks and ask the in-depth questions. And how many times do you get to sit down and talk to someone who's like the chairman of a rocket company sending HBO satellites up in orbit, stuff like that. So I try to help people see their own value. And I think the biggest challenge in particular is that women do not acknowledge their own power and their value. And I can tell you over and over again, I've worked with a lot of senior female executives that don't see what they bring to the table. And so one of the first things I do in that conversation when they start doubting themselves and saying, "Oh, I'm not sure, I'm not ready." And so I say, "Okay, get ready. Okay, write this down. Would a man ask themselves this?" And
Mm.
they're like, "Oh, yeah." And so women, a lot of times, I'm not trying to generalize, but I've seen a disproportionate number of women that oftentimes double think themselves or talk themselves out of an opportunity, whereas a man is just, "Oh, I'll just throw my hat in, it can't hurt." So women need to own their power. And the more you understand how you fit into the bigger picture, that helps you convey your value. And so the more you can convey your value can justify a raise. It could justify being promoted. It could help you see your way out of a bad situation. Like, hey, I've got more value than this. I can go find some other employer. So there's always options, and just being aware of what and being able to be in the moment and get that into your DNA about what value you bring to the table. I guess that's the biggest thing I've found over all this time I've been working with people, is that everybody has value. It's just you have to learn to tell your story. And when I talk to my clients, I just say, "You've always been this great. I'm just polishing polishing the mirror and holding it up. So now you can see it and everybody else can too. And that's where you need to spend time and get in the moment with your resume and feel what you've brought to the table. And that is an accurate reflection of you. So that's where people get the benefit of working with a third party such as myself, is that we can be that referee and also champion and cheerleader and reality check that sometimes we may doubt ourselves, and someone such as myself can say, you are that great and here's why. Obviously you got this far for a reason. Let's try to find out what those reasons are, and that helps clients see their value.
Absolutely. And you also recommend that people title their resume. For example, they are a director of marketing.
Yeah,
And
that's the job title headline I use at the top. So you
Right.
need to be clear. It's like branding. And if I'm a hiring person, I'm looking for a marketing director, your resume pops up, it says marketing director. That's like a subtle subliminal thing that it's already clicked in my head. Now it's okay, great, you're a marketing director. That's what I'm looking for. And as hiring people, they're desperately trying to find the next person that they can hire so they don't have to do this anymore. So if the resume can make the case, it's like hiring or marketing director, great. Okay. Oh my gosh, look at all the things they've done. It's quantified. This person has been go, 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 impact, 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 value, value, value. It's like, I'm going to pick up the phone and call this person because I don't want my competitor to do that. So
but you wouldn't recommend they put marketing professional.
no, because that's a nebulous term. Concrete terms, definitely.
Concrete.
I'll be really clear on what your career level is.
Absolutely. And
Expert, that says nothing.
Right.
Everybody's an expert.
exactly. I know I saw photos on resumes for a while and I don't see them as much anymore. What is your position on that?
Okay, if you're talking about photo of the individual, that's a big
Right.
no-no. And so we definitely want to steer clear from that because that can reveal protected class information, of course. From my understanding, it is still no. However, if you're going for an international job, that is accepted on CVs.
Okay.
They're international, and that's fine. But and they ask things in CVs that are not standard here in the United States, like your marital status, how many kids, and your citizenship, and what year you're born, and all that kind of stuff. But that is not included in American resumes for sure. But the other thing is, and you just touched on the giant iceberg here, is the other photos on your resume. There's a lot of chat and people love the infographic resumes. They're lovely, they're gorgeous, and they are visually very appealing. But the problem is oftentimes the content is in text boxes that are not readable by the applicant tracking system. So after all that work, you're going in the garbage can. So what I tell people is I don't do infographic resumes, but I will do resumes that do have graphical elements. It includes colors. You can have imagery that can complement. So for example, I just work with someone who's really heavy into manufacturing and laser cutting. He's a VP. So I got an image at the very top that I put in the lighter shade. So it's like a ghost image of a bench press cutting laser on metal, and that's perfect for him because that's who he is. And so that's okay. You can add charts and graphs and things like that, but they have to be images that you set behind the text so that the systems can skip right over the images, but it'll read the text, and that's what you want. But infographic resumes don't do that.
As we come to a close, what I love about your website is that you have so many different service offerings that you make available to people. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Resume writing, there's like the usual suspects. So resume writing, cover letters, LinkedIn. But a lot of people, they need help with interviewing. There's also a job search coaching. And then I've also added another one for salary negotiation. I think that is a huge problem because a lot of people don't even negotiate. I'm sure you've probably seen that a lot. And this is the one thing that will directly impact their type of life that they live is their earnings. And they don't spend a lot of time brushing up on negotiation. And it's the statistics are staggering that something like 70% of people don't even negotiate. Women are even less likely to negotiate. And they also don't realize what things are negotiable. Your time off, additional health insurance, because that's a big one. There's so many different things that are part of the overall negotiation package. But I've created another service that's like a quick start entrepreneur's guide, because a lot of people are like, I'm done with this. I want to start my own business, and they don't know where to start. And it is daunting. And I remember starting my business, and I'm sure you do too. You feel like a sheep lost out there in the big wide open meadow, and you don't know quite where to go. And having someone that kind of says, okay, here's the Cliff Notes version to help you get started on the right pathway. And so I've actually coached a lot of people into starting their own businesses too. So it's fun. I love doing what I do. And not too many people get to say that they've been in a job where they actually help and make a difference in people's lives. So for me, I get paid for what I do, but the intrinsic value of knowing them trying to make a difference is really awesome.
And it's true. We feel the same way about the work we do, helping
Yep.
people in jobs and also help coaching them along the way.
Mhm.
It's such satisfying work. We're truly, truly blessed
Yeah.
and grateful. So is there anything else that you want people to know about, or people need to know, or something we missed?
You should always remember that you have value, and make sure that you do get professional development while you're in a job. So you have a career, which is the bigger picture, and the job is the very current present moment. And what you want to be able to do is to keep in mind what your career goals are while you're in this job, and gain experience, skills, knowledge, and roll that into the next opportunity. So you might as well do something you enjoy. And I feel very fortunate. I've had that opportunity. Every single job I've had, I've loved. So
Oh, that's great.
it's a great career. I love it.
That's great. Same here. Just we're definitely in the right spot.
Exactly.
It's just been a pleasure having you on. We refer so many of our candidates to you.
I
And
appreciate that. Thank
I
you.
appreciate knowing about the entrepreneur piece, because we do have several people that come to us at a certain stage in their career. They're at the end of their career, but they're not really done yet.
Mhm.
And that's a great service to offer, and appreciate knowing about that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. To dive deeper into today's conversations, please visit us at mulberrytalent.com, where you can find additional resources and conversations, learn more about Mulberry, and see our complete service offerings in specialty areas including human resources, administrative office, finance, accounting, payroll, and operations. And don't forget to subscribe to Mulberry Conversations on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform.